There you go, Sue.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Wherever that is, I'll find it.
No, on the iPhone it says okay.
It says okay.
Yeah, it just says okay.
Yeah, sorry. It's if you flick and find the mute button, flick left, I think, is it once or twice?
I'm in messages.
Oh, you're
you're
still
in
in, yeah,
messages. Yeah.
okay, but you're unmuted, Sue. You're okay right now. It's anyone that's muted that won't be able to unmute until they hit that button.
Right.
I haven't hit anything.
No,
Yeah, you're okay.
fine.
We can hear you anyhow. So
you may just listen. So
Okay.
I will start now. My name is Diana Brent, and I am here with the AEBC. And today we are going to talk about the VoiceOver Rotor, how to set it up, also how to use it, and why you would ever want to use it. And so we're going to start out with a very basic idea of its purpose. The rotor is only available in VoiceOver. And so people who are not using VoiceOver will not be able to use it. Its purpose is to allow you to move in different ways around a screen. For example, by headings, by links, by words, by lines. You can move by lists, or it will also allow you to raise the volume or lower the volume of your speech, or change how your speech, how quickly it speaks. So, and there's actually about 50 or 60 things in your rotor. So really you, and you don't want to put all of them in it. The point of it is that once you're in either a message or on your home screen, anywhere, you can manipulate the rotor to choose the items that you have put into it. So if you were on your in a document, say, and you wanted to move by words, you could select words in the rotor, and then when you moved your finger, flicked it right or left, you would move forward and backward in that document by a word. If you set it to lines, then you would move by lines. Or if you set it to links or headings, whatever, you would move by that element. Now, assuming that the document has proper headings or has proper links in it. Often, if you have just straight text and no links or headings, that item won't even show up in your rotor because it's not available. Or if it does show up, it'll say no headings or no links. So then you know you can't move by that particular item. So the whole point of this rotor is to allow you to move around your screen and access information, specific information. So does anybody have any questions up to that point about what the rotor does and how it works? Because if we don't understand this basic thing, it's very hard to be able to access, or I mean, to understand why we're doing this.
I have a question.
Okay.
Like I've had some people set up things on my rotor for me.
Mm-hmm.
But when let's say I do headings,
Mm-hmm.
it'll still say some lines and different things. And
okay. So when you're set to headings, it will, yes, if you flick up and down, it'll move from heading to heading.
okay.
But if you flick right or left, it will read what's at that heading. If you flicked right, it would read the text that came after that heading. So if, for example, you saw the word chat spaces as a heading, if you flicked up and down, it would go to the next heading. And I'm thinking of Monday Morsels. It would go to the next heading in Monday Morsels. However, from chat spaces, if you flick right, it'll say BC affiliate chat, Thursday night chat, because that's what comes right below that heading.
Right.
So that's how you navigate around once when you're in, once you found the element that you want.
Great, because it's mostly the up and down.
Yeah. So
strokes.
up
I
and
don't
down
know.
moves, up and down. Well, if up and down moves from heading to heading, and then right and left will move by that, whatever you have set. So if you have set it by word, it would move by word. If you set it to lines, it would move by line.
Thank you. That's great. I get it.
Okay. Any other questions? Because these are good questions. None of them are questions that you should know, or we're assuming that because this is all new. So I like questions. Okay.
There's no
Now,
there's no raised hands, but
there's no
the
raised
other
hand.
people, but the other people that weren't able to unmute, I don't know if they've been able to solve that issue. Like if someone like Mary could kind of give us an indication whether we can hear you or not, because there's a few people that just like on my control panel, all I can do is ask them to unmute. Like,
Right. So are people able to, have you found the got it button or the okay button in order to? Perfect. Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes, I found the okay button.
Thanks, Mary.
Oh, fabulous. Has anybody, well, I guess we can't ask if they haven't, because if they haven't, then. So Mary, now that we're here, do you have any questions about what we've done so far?
No, actually, it's you explain things very clearly, and that's good to review all this stuff for sure.
Okay, perfect. All right, now the next thing to talk about is how to put items in your rotor. And so in order to do that, we start out by going to settings. And once we're in settings, we go down to accessibility. And I'm doing this on an iPhone, but me talking is clearer than my speech, so I'm saying where I am. So I double tapped on settings, and I guess you could get Siri to open settings too. I don't happen to do that, but I guess you could. And then I double tap on accessibility. Now I'm double tapping on VoiceOver. And to get from one of those items to another, I flick right once I double tap. So I'm now at VoiceOver, and it says switch button on, which is what I want. And I'm going to flick a long way down, because you have to pass things like VoiceOver tutorial, you have to pass speech rate, speaking, Braille. It's far down, so don't give up. What you're looking for, it is right below commands, and then it'll say rotor and it'll say button. And so you double tap on that rotor button. And once you get in there, the very first thing that focuses, there's a heading. At the very top is the back button, but the thing you come on to first is rotor items, which is all the things that you can add or have not show up in your rotor. So and that's what we're going to go into, but I'm going to tell you below, there's a button that says change rotor with item switch button on. And you think, now what the heck does that do? And what that does is, if you're, for example, on your home screen, where you can't really do any editing functions, it won't show you any of those in the rotor. But if you're in a document and you want to move by various things or edit something, because you can have all different ways of doing that, then you would, if you want that to be specific, you turn that on. If you don't care, then you leave it off. I have mine on. So mine, it says change rotor with item, switch button on. So that it's confusing what it means, but really it just means that you can change it. It says changes the selected rotor based on the VoiceOver focused item. So that's what that does. Now I'm going to go back to rotor items, which is the first item on the screen. And I'm going through this really slowly and specifically so that if you're doing this on your own later, you can actually find where we are. So I've double tapped on rotor items. And the first thing, and I believe this is the first thing in everybody's rotor, is
This meeting is
speech.
being transcribed.
Okie dokie.
This meeting
Is
is being
Sure.
the first item is speaking rate. So if you select this
Speech
and you
mode off.
select it by pressing double tapping it, it will tell you, VoiceOver will say speech rate selected or not selected. So if you double tap it, that means later when you're using your rotor, that item will show up. If you don't select it, speech rate won't show up. Below that, it says reorder speech rate. And I wouldn't do this first, but this is something you're going to want to do later on when you have everything you want in your rotor, because you may want to move things around. For example, if you select speech, or say you want to be able to read by characters, and this is handy if you want to spell something that's on your screen, somebody's email address or whatever, you can set your rotor to characters. And then if you swipe right or left, well, right, actually, unless you want to read backwards. If you swipe right, it'll read your text, whatever's focused on your screen, one character at a time. So if that's something really useful to you, you're going to want to, at some point, move that to a place where you can easily find it. So therefore, you would go back and do that. But at this point, let's talk about the things that we want to add. So speech rate's the first thing. Speech volume is the second. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to go through a fair number because there's probably 60 of them, and you won't want them necessarily. The next one is text selection. And if you ever get to the point where you want to edit or be able to cut, copy, and paste like you do on your computer, this is one you want to put in your rotor. If you're not ready to do that, you don't have to select it. You don't have to double tap on it. You can always come back to this menu later when you're ready. If it's on, it allows you to select things, but by swiping up or down, you will get things like character, word, line, page, or select all. And if you do that, when you swipe right, it's going to select by that character, word, line, or page, or select all from the point where your cursor is. So that's a handy command if you ever want to start doing text editing with your iPhone. And if you're not at that point, don't select it right now. Come back later. Below that is Braille screen input. I love Braille screen input. So I have it really close to where I start my rotor, because I just have to do one little turn of my rotor and it'll select that. But if you don't do Braille screen input, don't put it on your rotor now. Then characters, you can choose words or lines. I'm skipping headings is then links or buttons. So this is like on a web page when you're going down on your computer and it says button, button, button. If you know something's a button, you can put buttons on your rotor. And then when you're flicking right and left, if you focused on buttons and you flick right and left, it's going to move by those buttons on your screen. Or yeah. Okay. And then there's sounds. I don't have that, but you could put it in. Typing mode. There's non-visited links and visited links are all on here. Chantel, the last time we did this, had a really good, she put visited links on, and then when she goes to a web page, it will show her places she's been before, and that's probably something she likes, or maybe not, but we'll hope it is. And she can choose by visited links. The next one is for if you have a containers, which is for if you have an iPad. I'm not using my iPad, but if I did, I might want to put that in my rotor. Landmarks, that's an element on a web page. Tables. Now tables are useful because documents have tables, and now you can jump from table to table, and then you can learn how to navigate those tables. Then there's punctuation, so that's in speaking. Audio ducking, so that makes the speech louder or softer when something else, so for example, a streaming app is streaming, then it'll change voiceover. I don't tend to use it, but a lot of people really like it. Lists, that's when you get a bunch of numbered elements, and are numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4. You can search those lists if you know a document, like when I do Monday Morsel and I put bulleted things and numbered things, you could flip to lists and just search those if you knew something was in a list. Visited links, you can now then there's some really useful things like search fields. So if you're on a website and you want to get right to that search field where you're going to type text, you can actually put search fields on and it'll take you right there. Text fields, and I think I'm going to stop about there. There's a bunch more. There's for forms. So if you want to select a forms mode, like for when you're filling in a form, there's many, many more. For people who are low vision and they might want to use VoiceOver in combination with the Zoom on their phone, that you can add Zoom to your rotor. And then you can use your rotor to use it, flick to it or not, when you're using VoiceOver. So now on your rotor, they may not be in the same order as on mine, but they probably are. So basically, what you do is you select any of those items that I just listed, or the ones I didn't, that you think you'll use onto your rotor. And then we'll talk about reordering. So for example, if you put your rotor, I want to talk about reordering before I talk about how to move the rotor. So if you put all these items on and you think, I really want to have my characters, words, lines, headings, links in that order, I would go to my rotor, and we'll talk about how to move it, flick it, but I would change the rotor to whatever I would look in my, sorry, I'm not explaining this very well. I would go to the settings where I just am and pick my words, characters, say. And below that word character is reorder character. So I would double tap reorder that. And then if you flick down, and this will be confusing to you because it'll say move up. And you'll say, why is it doing that? But it's just the order that it places these options on the screen. So if you flick down the first time, it will say move up. And if you flick down again, it'll say move down. So that means if you do that, it will say, let's choose move up. It'll say move above, lines or characters, or I mean, no, we're moving characters. It'll say move above words or move above lines or move above something. And you keep moving that item around by double tapping on move up until you hear move above words. And then you know that that item is right next to your words when you're using your rotor. If you then wanted to move lines, you'd find that item in this, we're still in settings, you'd find lines, go below it, one item below, reorder lines, and you'd move it up or down, depending on where it is in your list, and then until it says below words. And then you would know that characters, words, and lines are in order on your rotor. So you would do the same thing, and it takes a little while to set it up at first, but once you get onto it, you can put everything in the order that you want them when you start to use your rotor. So that's a lot of talking from me. Are there any questions?
There's no raised hands, but does anyone? You can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. What are containers?
Containers are how it divides an iPad. Because you have more space on a screen, and I'm not totally understanding it, but it allows you to have things on one part of your screen and the other. So you can flip between, for example, in the mail app, it'll have all your boxes down one side. That's one container, or the container to
Yeah,
flip
that's one
to
container.
say the list of messages, for example. Then you would go to containers and flick down to the other container, and it would move you to the right side. It would allow it allows you to move by that area.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ron,
there's no advantage. There's no advantage on the iPhone.
No, I
no.
don't think. No.
Okay, that's why I've always never used it, I guess.
And actually,
Yeah.
it's and the iPad, it also depends how you orientate your iPad. So if you're like Diane's example with the mail app on the iPad, if you've got your iPad set horizontally, you'd have three containers on your screen. You might have your message list, your list of mailboxes, plus the actual text of the message that's got focus as well too.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
So it's like having three screens all in view at once, and you move from one to the other using the container.
Okay, but you can't do it on the phone one way or the other.
No.
'Cause it's not,
No.
it's
It
not
doesn't.
big,
I don't
it's
think
not
it,
big enough.
it actually didn't realize it was even as an option on the setting on the router settings on the phone until Diane has said that, because
It is actually on my router setting, and I have an
Yeah.
old iPhone, like an 8.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
So I didn't.
on there, but it doesn't
It's just that
do
it doesn't.
anything.
It doesn't really
Yeah.
do much on the. All it does on the phone is it moves you from the top to the bottom of the screen for something. If
Oh,
you
does it?
inadvertently
Okay.
go to it.
Well, that's no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No wonder I've never used it.
But that's a
Okay,
good
thank you.
question. No,
Thank you.
that's a great question. Because I wonder too. Sorry, Louise.
I was gonna say tables. Because, sometimes if you're on a website or you're in different situations with tables, maybe giving a more clear on tables, because tables is, sometimes you end up on a website that's got a table and you just don't know how to move it.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about tables when we talk about the Monday morsel survey, and not because I don't think it's a good question, but it would take almost a whole time. And why in the rotor, how it's useful is if there's a table on that page, you can move directly to that table. That's why you would use it in this instance. And then if the table's set up properly, flicking left or right would move you through the various columns of that table. But I think tables is probably a discussion other than how to navigate to them in this session for another time. But it's not a bad question. It's a perfect question.
But I think I'm going to set up my router where I've got more in it. And I think going to go you said you can set that one button up near the second button, or where you can have only what comes up what you need when you're on a certain page.
Well, it decides what's going to
It
get set
decides
up.
what gets put up. So like and that button, that switch, I think is turned on by default, because like I know my router, if I'm at my home screen, it only does the things that are available from the home screen. Like I still can move by like it still lets me do certain things, like if I want to spell the name of an app, because that's available in the home screen. So yeah, I can get letters and words, but that's about it. Like and then but the other thing too is your router default layout may still have things like characters, words, and lines at the top already. I think so. Like if you notice that your characters are first thing on that list, that's I think that's the default layout for that. That's the way mine, but I might have done that with mine as well too. So like for instance, my router personally, I've got characters, words, lines, and then it dives into the things that are available on websites: headings, links, buttons, etc. Then I get into things like speed, voice volume, sound, and I've got my sounds. I can turn my sounds on and off. I've got quite a few things in my router which probably don't need to be there anymore, but they're there just in case.
Yeah. The other thing that people have mentioned is it's probably, I believe that when you first get your iPhone, speech volume or speed might be at the very top, and you probably don't want those there because you might accidentally change them, because they would be available everywhere. They would be available on your home screen, on your web browser, on your email, because those are items you can change whenever you want. So you might want to move them further down your rotor in case you happen to accidentally make them happen. But it's a choice. You can play around with it. You can't hurt anything. You might think, well, I want it here because I like changing the volume of my speech. Well, if it doesn't bug you, leave it there. It's perfect. It's what you want, and you can always change it later. Remember, these settings are yours, so you can change them when you want.
Diane, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your speech volume, you can also do it by their buttons on the side, right?
Not really. The
Not
speech
really, no.
volume is for your voiceover. The buttons on the side is for, and it will affect voiceover to a certain extent, but the buttons on the side are for your media, mainly what you hear through your phone.
That's why it doesn't always work.
That's why it doesn't always work.
But if you go in, like I find it easier to rotate the phone than try to do some awkward thing with my fingers. So I flip the phone around, because Louise and another friend and a bunch of other people have already put things in my rotor.
Okay, well, that's good. So then your next task is to start to use those. And now you've moved me beautifully into ways to move your rotor, because that's exactly, and I did some of this before, but we're going to do it again. And if we don't get to Monday morsels today, that's okay. But if you guys are still interested, we purposely set up 2 sessions. And what I would love you to do this week, if you want to come back next week and are not tired of me, is try putting the things into the rotor now that you understand what they do, even if you may or may not use them. And that will be your task for the next session. We may get to it because we don't have to go yet. I'm just sort of looking ahead. And we're going to talk about ways of moving of the rotor. The rotor does not show on the screen. In fact, people that don't use VoiceOver will likely not have a clue about what you're talking about. So it doesn't, in terms of an icon or whatever. I don't think it shows on your screen. Actually, I never asked, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So once you have the items on your screen, you think of the rotor as a knob that you're going to turn. That's the first idea. The old-fashioned, before we had touch buttons everywhere, the old-fashioned knobs on your radio that you turned your volume. When you take a hold of that with your thumb and your finger, and then you turn your wrist or your hand a little bit to the right, that's how one way to turn these knobs. But you've got your phone in your hand. So now you can hold your phone in either hand. I'm very left-handed, so I hold my phone in my right hand, and I put my fingers on the screen. I happen to use my index and middle finger to turn my rotor. Many people you could use your index finger and thumb, or you could try using 3 fingers. Basically, you put anywhere on your screen, doesn't matter where, put your fingertips on the screen, whether it's your thumb and fingers, and then you turn your hand clockwise to move forward through your rotor, or counterclockwise, in other words, to the left to move back. Now, Sue had a good point that, and I didn't do this at first. I found that 2-finger gesture difficult. So I didn't do that. Instead, I left my fingers on the phone, and I moved the phone in my other hand. In other words, I'll think of it as a right-handed person. I would hold my phone in my left hand. My fingers are touching the screen, my right hand. And now I move the phone in a bit of an arc, left or right, depending on whether I want to go clockwise or counterclockwise. And that's another way to do the same action. Actually, you're really doing the same thing, but instead of moving your hand with your fingers, you're moving your phone. So that is another way of doing it. A third way is to place your phone on the table. And I never thought this would work, but it actually does. And you take a finger from each hand, let's say our index finger, put them close together on the screen, and move one up as you move one down. So you're really making that same turning motion with 2 fingers, but you're doing it differently in not using it as a dial. So but you're doing the same motion. And that's another way of doing it. That's also a way that may work easier for people on an iPad, say, if they don't, just because of the angle of their hand, if the iPad's down on a table. I haven't used an iPad for a while, but the other way people have told me is they take two thumbs, your thumb from each hand, and move one up and one down. You could hold the phone in your hand to do that, or you could have it on a table and use your thumbs to move it. There's all those four, or at least four ways I know of moving moving the rotor. And the reason that you want to move the rotor is that's how you get from the different items that you have set up in your rotor. For example, your words, lines, headings, whatever. That's how you move between those elements on your rotor. There is another way, and neither Richard and I have tried it. You can set up a command for gestures in your rotor. And if people are interested in that, we can look it up for next week, but neither of us are prepared to discuss it because we don't use it. But doesn't mean it isn't good. It just means we don't know. And I will admit that we don't know.
Can I share?
You can.
Maybe you're the person that we both
Yeah.
talk to.
Well, actually, I
Seen it.
had help because I couldn't ever get the router to work. And actually, some of the things you just told me would have helped me, but I had no. But what I did is when they came out with iOS, when it was that you could actually change your router, how you use your router. I did it. Dor walked me through it because she couldn't do it. So we went through and we made 2 fingers flick left, 2 fingers right, flick right to go backwards and forward in our router. And it's a process to do it. And I can't remember how we did it, but yes, I think it's under that, what you're talking about. You can actually take a gesture that's not being used for the phone to use to do your router. but
Right.
but Dora and I changed it to 2 fingers left to go back up, 2 fingers right to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that. And there's a way to do it under router settings. And it was, yes, I think there's something to
I
do with
think
commands. But
you
this
do
was
it in
about
the
5-6
command.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would do it in commands, and you would add custom commands to the router gestures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's also another way, if you allow me.
Oh, yes.
What really worked for me, because I was having a problem with this twisting business,
Same as I was.
is to simply put 2 fingers on the screen. I use my index and my middle finger.
Yeah.
I hold the phone in my left hand. I put 2 fingers on the screen and I slide. If I want to go right, I slide the index finger up while I'm sliding the middle finger down. You don't need to twist at all. You just slide one up, the other one down, or in the opposite direction. And that's what seems the most comfortable and the most accurate for me. So if anyone wants to try it, you'll see that it might work for you.
Well, yeah, that's the same thing as with the 2 hands. You're doing the same motion, but you're using 2 fingers on one hand. And that's actually whatever works. There's no wrong way.
No,
And
that's because that's just because you don't always want to put your phone or your tablet down. Or if I want to hold on to my phone, or if I'm standing at a bus terminal, I just don't want to have to put the phone down to be able to do it. So I do it with 2 fingers of the same hand.
That works perfect. The other thing I have is a lanyard on my phone. And I did that because now I can wear it around my neck, and it's not going to drop. It's very handy. I just stuck it on the case. Sorry, Rob?
No, it's Richard. Just to it was more just kind of you mentioned it earlier. I asked someone cited one time when we do that router gesture on the screen of our phone, a dial appears on the screen showing all the router functions. It just as long as but only when we're actually doing the gesture, it disappears right away.
It's like a clock. It has as many notches on it as you have put in your rotor, as many
in your
things.
rotor. So as
And it
you add
has,
more and more things, the things get closer and closer together on the graphic apparently.
and it writes the word above. So whichever
Yeah.
one you're changing to volume or whatever, it writes it above. So if you had a little bit of sight and you wanted to imagine or try to follow along, it does have that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I should have
but
asked.
it does help if someone's site is helping you with the phone, you can actually change the
Oh.
router and they would see it on the screen.
Okay, perfect. I should
One,
have asked that before. And I should have asked Chantel because I knew she would know. And while we're doing that, so does that mean if you touched one of those words, it would move to that setting? Like if you say when you turn the rotor, it shows. If you could see it, if you tap there, would it change it?
No, the
Probably
words
not.
aren't written
No.
all the way around, Diana.
Ah.
It's like they're like little branches, you know, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And when you change to volume, it'll write the word volume above the clock
Okay.
feature.
So it's
Yeah.
whatever
And
it's focused on. Yeah.
and the way Bill explained it to me, the dial actually turns when we're moving our fingers.
Yes.
So whether you're doing the gesture that Ron suggested or the one that's the one that Apple recommends, it actually turns the dial depending on what direction you're moving your hand. So if you're doing the gesture that Ron suggested where you're moving one finger up and it's going clockwise, it actually turns the dial clockwise and focuses the item that's at the top, I guess. It would be my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a needle that kind of moves to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
along with
Yeah.
where it's supposed to be. And it's very quick. It's very abrupt. It shows it to you quick. So if you're visually impaired and it takes you a while to focus, forget it. It doesn't stay.
Yeah.
Really, I'm
Right.
serious.
It doesn't stay there long
stay
enough.
on. No.
No. Okay.
you know, when it says drag item,
Uh-huh.
I cannot do that gesture.
N- No, I have never bothered to drag items because there's other ways to do it.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
can just
even.
you can just close it. But dragging an item, I don't know how you get your finger to stay on what
Well,
you're
I
supposed
don't
to drag.
think
You
we
don't
can
have to.
drag it. No.
Yeah, and the router doesn't dragging items isn't part of it. That's if you're starting to edit your home screens or
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
things around it. Yeah, because the router doesn't actually you don't have to drag anything in the router.
Yeah.
The
No.
routers, yeah.
I was just curious why I couldn't do it.
Nobody
Well,
can because that's
nobody
not
can
how
really.
you do it in
Yeah,
Okay.
and
VoiceOver.
it's yeah, and that would be another
Are
session
you
more advanced.
sorry, are you talking about dragging icons from one screen to another? Or for one page to another?
Yes, but actually
Yeah.
not doing it with the VoiceOver editing functions, just actually being able to drag them, which a
No.
sighted person can do. So
No.
that's what, yeah.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
a
'cause,
whole other topic.
Yeah, the editing function works fine.
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But when
And
it says drag an item, we can't actually physically drag that item.
No,
We have to
no.
go to the edit.
And the
Okay.
editing function is one of the features that can be in your router under the actions item in the maybe you might want to talk about the actions router option, Diana, because that one appears and changes depending on what you've got open.
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't actually see that. You talk about it.
So what in your router settings and the actions items option was added to the router a few iOSs ago. So the actions item is something that changes depending on what you're doing. So the sometimes if you're on in a website or on an app, you'll hear a voiceover prompt. If you got your voice tutor message turned on, it'll say actions available. So if you switch your router to the actions option in your router, then you can flick up and down with one finger and choose the actions that might be available for a given option. For example, Sue's issue about dragging and dropping icons is an actions function on the home screen. It is part of the editing apps function. But as we said, that's another whole other lesson. But the actions router, it might be used on apps like Facebook, for example, if you want to add a like to something or view or look for links, because sometimes in some apps, links might only be available through the actions option. So if it's not already in your router, I would definitely add that to your router options, because it is something that often is only available if you've got that turned on in your router.
Right.
Well, it's actions. I don't do Facebook or those at this point. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it, but it
It's
says
fantastic. It's
is
fantastic for cut and
Yeah.
paste.
Yeah.
is action menu, like when it says active, is that the same as open?
Yes and no.
Something
We have-
different.
No, yeah. So let's say let's go back to the thing, your favorite app, Sue, email. The mail. So
No.
yeah. So when you're in your list of messages, when it says, let's say you've got it says unread message from Diana Brent. And you think, I don't want to read this message, and it say actions available. If you flick up and down on that message, one of the options is to delete it.
Yeah.
So you flick
Yeah.
up until you hit say delete, double tap it, it's gone. And then when Diana said, "Did you get my email?" you could say, "No, I didn't. It must have got lost."
Yeah.
So like if actions is something to do with, if you like, sometimes I don't know if my replies get to where they're going
Oh.
because they're
Well,
either
it's funny in mail, like the reply function is not a separate action. Well, unless I've got my mail set up wrong, it comes up under this something called more, and then you have to actually open it and hit reply. Like where
yeah.
does it? Yeah. And
That's right,
so,
yeah.
but if you hit reply and then just start typing the message, it is going to where you think it's supposed to be going, unless the senders set their reply to something else, like listservs, for example. Sometimes we'll set the reply to list instead of reply to the individual who sent the message.
Yeah,
The
because
other-
I got a message last night from CCB, from
Mhm.
Lenny Kennedy, and she wanted me to reply, and I did whatever it is. I looked for greeting, or I looked for whatever it is, and then I pushed send it. It went whoosh, but I still have no idea whether she got it.
The other thing you can do is you're in your inbox, move to your sent box. And if you look in your sent mailbox, it should show you all the messages you sent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you're in Lenny. If Lenny was the last person you sent a message to, it should appear, depending on how your
At the
box
top.
is ordered,
Oh,
at the
yeah.
top. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the
Yeah, well-
bottom, I guess, if you're from the other
Yeah.
way.
Oh, I'll look in sent. Great.
Yeah.
See, I know
But
where
yeah,
all
so that's the actions function, is like, that's something that as soon as it became part of, like, something that was put in, that could be put in the router. So if it's not in your router, you have to in the settings of the 60 items that Diana mentioned, should be like that you may want in your router. That is, for me, that's a pretty mandatory one, and I actually think it might have been added by default when it was first put into the put into the voiceover options, because it's been around for a few years now.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I have a question. When you finish putting all the items you want into the router there,
Yeah.
is there a done button or something? How
No,
do
you just get
complete
out of
that?
just go back. It's like your
Oh.
settings, and you just get out of it. The back
Oh, okay.
button is still at the top, and you can
Right,
get out.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And it leaves
Thanks.
them there. No, that's
Yeah,
a
okay.
great question. That's a great question. Now, I wasn't gonna go. I mean, I had plans to go further, but I think we got a lot done. I will entertain questions, but the other thing I'm wondering about, because it came up 2 or 3 times today, and this isn't to do with the rotor, but it would help you with things. Do people understand how the app switcher works?
Well, it's something you
Yeah.
open and close. to get in and
Yeah,
out of things.
Like switch.
sort of. You can, but you don't have, you wouldn't have to get in and out of them that way. What it allows, the purpose of the app switcher, because you don't have to close things, you can use the app switcher. For example, if you are in mail and a message comes in and you want to read that message, you can go hit your home button, the mail's there, and you can go to messages, read your message. Now, rather than closing everything and looking and trying to get back to your home screen, you can go to the app switcher, flick left and right, and it'll show you all the apps that are open. And you have a choice of either going to that app once it's in focus or closing that app, whichever you want to do. And it's actually a good idea to use your app switcher every so often and close apps that you've forgotten that are open. Sometimes I look and there's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 apps that I haven't used in a while, but I haven't closed them or turned off my phone, and they're still hanging around there. So the app switcher, and you can get to it by pressing your home button twice quickly. If you hit it 3 times, VoiceOver will go off, but you can hit it 3 times. Well, if you have it set up as your shortcut key. If you hit it 3 times and VoiceOver goes off, just hit it 3 times again and it'll go on.
Oh,
But
That's for
can you,
VoiceOver, turning VoiceOver on and off.
Yes,
So
yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
the 3 times.
Can-
The 2 times is your app switcher on
App-
with phone.
Well,
Yes,
And
I'm
then
the
for-
queen of turning everything off and rebooting maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And I'd rather not do that. So thank you.
Can we still switch apps with the 3 fingers swipe left or right? Is it 3 fingers or 4?
I have never
Used to-
done it that way.
Yeah, I can't remember. It used to be either 3 or 4 fingers if you swipe left or right with, like I said, 3
You
or
can
4.
switch pages that way.
Yeah, Pages.
But
I've never done
thought
an
you could-
app.
I can't
It'll
remember if
switch
one is with 3
pages.
fingers and the other one is for 4. But I thought we used to be able to change
so
apps
3
that way.
fingers,
Really?
Ron, moves you back and forth in your pages in your home screen.
Yeah.
If you have an app open, let me just try it now. I'm just gonna open something.
I thought the 4
I'm
fingers
just
swipe.
yeah. No, it doesn't work anymore. I can't get it to work.
Okay,
No, I
so
can't
maybe
get-
they changed it. It used
It's
to
screwed.
work.
Oh yeah, it does. So 4 finger swipe left and right. When you're in one of your open apps, moves you between all the other open apps as well.
That's right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
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 It still works.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
It still works. Yeah.
Well, I think this
I just that
session,
You're right,
my
it
hand movements
does.
aren't precise enough. Yeah. Sorry,
Yep.
Susan.
Yeah,
I think
that's really
this session is wonderful. I really feel I've missed out on a lot with not paying a lot of attention. Like for a long time, I just was doing chats.
Yeah.
But since maybe the last 6 months, I've really enjoyed the sessions, especially since we figured out that we had the Thursday and Friday chats a bit mixed up. But the thing is, this is really great.
excellent. And it didn't totally follow the format, but everybody, I'm hoping you all got something out of it. And I want to get an idea of if you want to continue next week and go on to actually navigating a document. And if you do, you would have to be able to use your app switcher to have Monday Morsel's email up in one window and Zoom up in the other. So that's why I thought maybe we should talk about the app switcher. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. If we're going to do that, you need to play around with what apps you want to have in your rotor. And at the beginning of the session next week, I want you to come back and tell me what problems that you had. You couldn't add them, or it didn't seem to work the way you wanted. And maybe if that's as far as we get, that's as far as we get, because there's no point in doing these things if you don't try them and come back with problems, or I did it and it's fabulous. I mean, you can come back with success stories too. But my point is, we can keep running as many sessions as we need for as long as we want, as long as you guys are, it's working for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Definitely. And I will say I'm going to miss some of them because of my dad and that.
Yep.
So I'm going to be counting on the YouTube to go back and learn something, because there's a couple things I know I need to learn.
Yeah. Well,
Diana,
this
may I?
YouTube, yeah,
Oh,
please.
sorry.
Chantel.
I just wanted to say I came to listen, and I'm sure probably I, speak for others who are quite capable as well. If between now and next week you have a burning question, then some of us aren't available, try me as well. I wanted to listen to the way you were being, the way the presentation was today, so I can repeat some of the same things, not teach you another way that I know how to do something which is totally, different than what Diana just taught you. So that's why I came to listen today. So I'm also available. If you have something you can't get through between now and next week, let me know.
I will also come to the Thursday chat, I think. I haven't looked at my calendar, and you can ask me questions there. Or you can always email me. You can email the secretary account. I do look at it daily, and I don't object to having questions, or I tried this and it doesn't work and I'm not sure why. We can talk about it. But if this format is working for you, we will continue next week. What do you think? Do you want to go off and try it this week and come back?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That
Okay,
is what we...
I'm going to stop the recording now
Yeah,
unless there's
stop the
any other.
recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't forget to invite your friends who